Hello everyone, we're learning Daf Yomi Kuf Nun Daled 154. It's chapter 24, the last chapter of this tractate, and the name of the chapter is Mishi Ichshich. We'll start from the top of the page of Zvid. The Gemara records a different version of Rabbi Menashe ruling. Zvid Masnei Ocha. Rabbi Menashe said, Achar Behemo b'Shabbos, one who leads a laden animal. On Shabbos, okay, so if somebody is leading an animal that is loaded, has a burden, carries things on its back, b'shoigeg is if it was inadvertently, he is liable to a sin offering. If he does it b'mezid, intentionally, he is liable to death by stoning. So the Mosiv Rabbi challenged this. One who desecrates the Shabbos, doing something for which one is subject to chatos when done inadvertently. Is subject to stoning when he does it intentionally. But this implies if one is not subject to a chatos when this act is done inadvertently, and then he is not subject to stoning when it's done intentionally. If inadvertently lading an animal to perform a melacha does not require chatos, intentionally doing so cannot require stoning. So he wants to say, he's a little more lenient, and he wants to say that if you, first of all, wants to say you're not liable to chatos, so therefore you shouldn't be liable to skila. Right. Everything is going one. It's downgraded a little bit. Right. If it's not chatos, then not skila. Then you're not a skila. Okay. Right. For the shogeg, for inadvertent, you're not liable to sin offering, then you're not going to be liable to skila. Miktani, but did the Mishnah state explicitly ayin chayovim? But if one is not subject to a chatos, it doesn't say one is not subject to a chatos. Etc. This is what the Mishnah said. Something in which one is subject to a chatos when it is done inadvertently. If you're going to do it inadvertently, you will be liable to chatos. Then when you do it intentionally, you're liable for stoning. But there is something that you're not liable to chatos if you did it b'shoigeg, unintentionally, and if you did it intentionally, you wouldn't be liable to stoning. What is it? Someone who carries the animal with its burden on its back, laden, and carries that on Shabbos. That's the exception to the rule. Usually, anything that is done inadvertently, on Shabbos you'll be liable to a sin offering. But mechamer is a different story. Mechamer is someone who carries a laden animal on Shabbos. He would not be liable, according to this, to a sin offering, and he does it b'shogeg, intentionally, and if he does it b'mezid, he would not be liable to stoning. Rava, the brother of Rav Mori bar Rochel, and some say that Rav was the father of Rav Mori bar Rochel. So there are two versions who stated this ruling, and some say that it was not that it was Rava Achua de Rav Mori Baruch. Now, Lelishna Basa, according to the latter version, Kashya de Rav Achsher el Rav Mori Baruch, it is different to understand that that incident in which Rav declared Rav Mori Baruch fit, Umanye befursa devovel, and appointed him among the officers of Babylon. If his father was an Israelite, why was Rav's declaration necessary? What happened there? If you look at number 4, it says, throughout the Talmud, Rav Mori is known not by his father's name, but rather by his mother's name. If you notice, it says Rav Mori bar Rochel, right, son of Rochel. His mother Rochel was Shmuel's daughter. Now, Shmuel's daughter was taken captive, and one of her captors, Isur, cohabited with her. and she convinced Mari later, and she conceived Mari, right? She conceived Mari. She got pregnant to Mari. Later, Isur converted and was known as Isur the convert. Okay, so Isur was was thus biologically Rav Mori's father, but not legally, since the Torah does not recognize any legal connection between a Jewish child born of a Jewish mother and his non-Jewish father. Out of respect to Rav Mori, therefore, Rav Mori is not known by his father's name, but rather by his mother's. So Rav Mori bar Rochel. Many Rishonim delete the second version entirely because besides the question cited in the Gemara here, how can we say that his father's name was Rava when we know it to have been Isur? It is difficult to understand that incident in which Rab declared Rav Mori bar Rochel fit and appointed him among the officers of Babylon. It says if he was already Israelite, this declaration was not necessary. So what does it say? Number 5, a convert or son of 2 converts may not be appointed to a position of authority over Israelite Jews. So now Rav Mori is in a way is a son of a convert. Jews descended from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The source for this law is cited in Kiddushin. Kiddushin 76b, Yevamos 45b. The pasuk states in Deuteronomy, "You must appoint Sim Tosim Alecha, over you a king, who is from the midst of your brothers." The double expression Sim Tosim, appoint, literally appoint, you shall appoint, teaches us that any appointment made, even a minor one, should be conferred only on someone of native Israelites descent. It would seem that Rav Mori bar Rochel could not legally serve as an officer. However, Rav ruled that he could. Why? Because even though his father was not an Israelite, his mother was, and this is sufficient to render him from the midst of your brothers. Now, if Rav Mori bar Rochel's father was someone named Rava, a native Israelite, then it is obvious that Rav Mori is fit to serve as a minister. He is descended from 2 native Israelites. There is no chidush over here. Dilma trei Mori bar Rochel. So the Gemara answers that perhaps there was 2 Mori bar Rochel, one that came from Rava and one that came from Isur. Okay. Isur is prohibition and the name of the person. Yeah. We have the name Isar. In Yiddish name is Isar. Many times it means Yitzchak, I believe. He will teach this ruling Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan Lifter in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and to the effect that the transgressor is always exempt as follows. Rabbi Yochanan said, one who leads his laden animal on Shabbos is entirely exempt. If he does so inadvertently, he is not liable to because all the prohibition of the Torah for which one brings a chatos must be analogous to performance of idolatry. Also, if he leads laden animal intentionally, he is not liable to death by stoning. That one who desecrates the Shabbos by doing something that is subject to a chatos when it is done inadvertently, is subject to stoning when he does it intentionally. But if one is not subject to a chatos when the act is done inadvertently, and he is not subject to stoning when it is done intentionally. Furthermore, he is not even liable to the penalty of lashes for having transgressed a negative commandment. Because this prohibition, do not do any melacha, serves as warning not to do any melacha on pain of liability to court-imposed execution. Any prohibition that serves as a warning for a court-imposed execution, and Loikim Olav does not carry the penalty of lashes.
I can see why Tosafos had a lot of questions. Not so passionate.
So we're going into page 154b. Even according to the one who says that such prohibition it does carry the penalty of lashes, leading a loaded animal does not. For here, for were the Torah's intent in this prohibition to forbid leading a loaded animal, or in general causing an animal to perform a melacha, then the merciful one should have written, Loi sasecho melacha uvemtecho, do not do any melacha, and your animal should not do any melacha, which we would understand to mean with your animal. Ato lamale, why does it say, Loi sasecho melacha, ato, you, and then uvemtecho? Why then do I need the word you? As the pasuk says, you and your animal, this extra word serves to divide the verse and to teach the following. Who knew the mechayev? He is liable if he does, if he violates the Shabbos, if he performs the melacha on Shabbos. He does work, labor on Shabbos. But as for the actions of his animal, although he is responsible for them, he is not liable for them. When he reaches the outermost court, the outermost courtyard of the city, we learn that he has to, if he has a wallet with him, he puts it on his donkey. If he doesn't have a donkey, he gives it to the cheres, shaita, and kota, the minor. So now it says, but the point is, you have to drop it as soon as you get to the outermost courtyard of the city, and commences to unload the donkey. You may take off any utensils that may normally be moved on Shabbos. However, those utensils that may not be moved on Shabbos, they are on the donkey, because they are muktzeh, he may not move himself. Instead, he undoes the ropes that hold the saddle, and the sacks fall down on their own. So the Gemara cites a ruling that elaborates on the proper procedure in loading muktzeh utensils from an animal on the Shabbos. If his animal was loaded with glass utensils, he may bring pillows, cushions, place them underneath the animal, and then loosen the ropes so that the sacks fall upon them. That's what we call doing something b'shinui. He does it indirectly with it, some kind of a change. Usually you take off the saddle, you take it down. In this case, he just opens the saddle. Now the animal usually moves around, and the saddle will fall down. But we learned that he may take utensils, he's allowed to take utensils that may normally be moved on Shabbos. Now glass utensils are typically not muktzeh. Why then does Rav Huna require that they be removed by loosening the ropes? Rav Huna stated his ruling in reference to used glass pipe. What's pipettis? And blood letter. Pipettes of a blood letter.
Yeah. The Moyle has it.
Says in number 4, it was the custom in earlier times to visit a bloodletter periodically. People would give blood, like people donate blood. But back then they would do it for medicinal purposes. The bloodletter made an incision in his client and collected the blood with glass pipette. So that was the vial, what we call today.
Vials
is a little wider.
Wider, it's very thin, and it comes right up.
So that's carne de umno, pipettes of bloodletter. By allowing the pipettes to fall on pillows and cushions, he will be nullifying the preparedness of a utensil. Why? Because utensil is not going to be good anymore. Once the pipettes fall, the pillows and cushions will be immobilized for the remainder of the Shabbos. Since so now so the pillows are stuck. You can't use the pillows anymore.
Right, that's the base.
So that's mevater kli me'echonoi. Pillows were permitted to you, but now that you place something that is forbidden to you on them muktzeh, then you're stuck. You can't move the pillow because the pillow becomes a basis l'davar asur, a base for something that is forbidden. So what you're not nullifying this pipettes, you're nullifying the pillows, pillows and cushions. Because he doesn't want this pipettes to fall on the floor. He puts the pillow, right. He puts the cushionings there, but the problem is the cushioning now are stuck.
Well, you can't have it both ways.
So the Gemara answers b'shlife zutri. So Avuna is referring to a small sacks of pipettes because of their small size. These sacks can be rolled off the pillows and cushions on Shabbos without being handed directly. The pillows and cushions need not be immobilized for the entire Shabbos, and the prohibition against nullifying the preparedness of a utensil does not apply. Basically, they challenged it from the following bais. If his animal was loaded with sacks of untithed produce and glass bars, he must loosen the ropes and let the sacks fall to the ground, even though the glass bars will break by his doing so. But according to Rav Huna, he should be allowed to prevent their breaking by cushioning the fall with pillows and cushions. He's allowed. According to Rav Huna, he should be allowed to prevent their breaking by placing the cushions there. Also, so there in the Baisa, glass bars refers to slabs of glass. These are muktzeh, and too large to be rolled off the pillows and cushions. Therefore, they may not be allowed to fall onto pillows and cushions, since doing so would immobilize them for the entire Shabbos. This is also indicated by a precise reading of the wording of the Baisa itself. Or by juxtaposing untithed produce and glass bars, the Baisa implies dumya the tevel, that it refers to bars that are similar to untithed produce. Just as untithed produce is something that is useless to him on Shabbos. So to here, when the Baisa refers to glass bars, it means the kind of glass bars that are useless to him on Shabbos, namely glass slabs, which are muktzeh. But then what is the point of the Baisa's emphasizing that one must allow the glass items to fall, even though they may break? Apparently one might have thought that the loss of the glass is a mitigating factor and should warrant cushioning the fall with pillows and cushions, and the Baisa wishes to dispel this notion. But if the Baisa is referring to glass slabs, then there is no loss involved in their breaking, and no reason for anyone to think that we should allow cushioning their fall. So you're only allowed to cushion their fall, to cushion something fall, if you're worried about loss. Okay? You're worrying about it breaking. You might have thought that the rabbis were concerned with an animal financial loss as well, with a substantial loss. Kamashmalan, the Baisa therefore informs us that this is not so. The rabbis did not...
A minimal financial loss as well as a substantial loss.
The rabbis did not...
It says the Gemara implies, right?
No, Kamash Mulan, it says that Baisa therefore informs us that this is not so. The rabbis did not waive this prohibition.
For the sake of minimal loss.
But that's not how you spell wave. That's how...
that's a different wave.
It's a different wave.
This means letting...
right, move it in the... they didn't push it away. Yeah. Anyhow, I got it. So it says, for the sake of the minimal loss involved in the fall of large glass slabs, and did not allow cushioning their fall. Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Oimer. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, if his animal was loaded with a sack of untithed produce.
Yeah.
You should position his head under one end of it. And push it up and over to the other side. And the sack will fall by itself.
So you're getting under the animal, and you're going this way to the saddle and getting it to go over to the other side of the animal. Okay. That's different.
So he does it with the head, not with the hand. It says over here, he should position his hand under, and he picks up his head, and the load is falling off. Now this is a problem. A donkey of Rabban Gamliel was once loaded with honey.
Yeah.
As the Shabbos began. He didn't want to touch it till after Shabbos, until Saturday night. Shabbos Mesa, on Saturday night the donkey died.
Yeah.
The Gemara wonders why Rabban Gamliel did not want to unload the honey on Shabbos. We have learned in the Mishnah. He may take off any utensils that may normally be moved on Shabbos. Now, since honey is edible, it is not muktzeh and may be taken off the donkey. So why did Rabban Gamliel not take it off? So the case was where the honey had soured and was thus muktzeh. I didn't know honey can be soured.
Me neither. I was thinking the same thing.
Of what use is spoiled honey? Why was Rabban Gamliel transporting it?
Yeah.
Lechisiso de gamle can be applied to the abrasions on camel's back. I guess to treat the camels.
Well, we're not big on camels here, so.
It says in 17, however, the sour honey is muktzah because one is not permitted to apply salves to animals on Shabbos.
You couldn't know.
Why shouldn't he just loosen the ropes and allow the sacks containing the honey just fall to the ground? The Gemara says, the sack would have split open and the honey would have been ruined. So let them bring cushionings and they would be protected. The pillows and cushions would have become soiled from the spillage.
Yeah.
And would thereby nullify the preparedness of a vessel. What about suffering of a living creature, which is biblically prohibited, keeping the load on the animal the whole Shabbos? So he says, Gamliel thought that causing suffering to a living creature is merely rabbinic and does not supersede another rabbinic prohibition. So we see why Rabban Gamliel didn't want to do it. Abaye, that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says Tzaba L'chaim. He should have done it. But Rabban Gamliel said Tzaba L'chaim is rabbinical, and he didn't want to do it. Meaning Tzaba L'chaim is rabbinical, and therefore it does not supersede another rabbinic prohibition.
Yeah.
What's the other rabbinic prohibition?
About taking the
Mevater kli me'echana, causing a kli not to be useful on Shabbos is also a problem. Yeah. Here's another different example. Abaya once discovered Rabbah, and he was sliding his son down from the back of a donkey on Shabbos. The master is making use of living creatures, and it's prohibited to do so on Shabbos. How can you put your son to begin with on the donkey's back? And these are merely the sides of the donkey that I'm using. So don't logos rabban. And the rabbis never decreed prohibition regarding the sides of an animal. It says in 23, Rabbah did not sit his son astride the donkey. Rather, he merely slid him down the donkey's sides. This is not the part of the donkey that is usually used, and the rabbis did not include it in the injunction. From where you can infer that this is so, that now for learned in the Mishnah, he who undoes the rope that hold the muktzah items fastened to the saddle and the sacks fall down on their own. What type of sacks is the Mishnah referring? It is not referring to a tied saddlebags. In such a case, he would need to lean on the donkey as he removes the saddlebags. The havulu tzedadin, which would be a use of its sides. Since the Mishnah permits this, we see tzedadin gobels v'rabbanon. The rabbis never decreed a prohibition regarding the sides of an animal. The Gemara refutes the proof. No, the Gemara says that is not the case of our Mishnah. Rather, our Mishnah speaks of untied saddlebags that are merely held together by a clasp. One merely needs to free the clasp in order for the saddlebags to fall on their own. The loy v'tzedadin, which does not entail leaning on the side of the donkey at all. Inami, alternatively, the saddlebags are joined with rope chains fastened together, but lachto with a clip. Here too, one need only remove the wooden clip in order to release the sacks, which does not require leaning on the donkey. Abaye attempts to refute Rabba's view that it is permitted to make use of the sides of an animal. Abaye challenged Rabba from the following Mishnah. If two walls of a sukkah are man-made, and one is formed by a tree, it is invalid, but one may not go up into it on the festival. Now, how are the walls formed by a tree? Is it not that he carved holes into the tree, inserted planks into these holes to form a wall, and then rested the roof of the sukkah upon these plank walls, so that the schach is supported by the plank walls, which are considered tzedodim, sides of the tree. Now the Mishnah forbids entering the sukkah on the festival, lest he make use of the schach, which it emerges is supported by the sides of a tree. Utzedodin asurim, that making use of the sides of a tree is forbidden, and by the same token, making use of the sides of an animal ought to be forbidden. The Gemara deflects Abaye's refutation of Rabba's offering an alternative explanation of this Mishnah. The case is where he bent the tree over to form the tree itself into a wall, and rested the schach directly upon it. One should certainly be prohibited to enter such a sukkah on the festival, because in this case, if he makes use of the schach, which rests on the tree itself, he will be making use of the tree proper, and not merely of its sides. It emerges that according to Rabbah, the Mishnah must be dealing with a case where the schach rests directly on a tree, which he has bent over to form a wall. The Gemara challenges this explanation. If so, that the schach will rest directly on the tree, Ema Sefer, consider the end of the Mishnah. If 3 walls are man-made and one is formed by a tree, it is valid, and one may go up into it on the festival. Now, if the Mishnah refers to where he bent the tree over and rested the schach directly on it, then why where there are 3 man-made walls, is one allowed to go up into the sukkah on the festival? After all, the 4th side of the schach still rests on a tree, and if he makes use of the schach, he will be making use of the tree. You cannot make use of the tree on Shabbos. The Gemara points out that part of the Mishnah is just as difficult for Abaye as it is for Rabbi. So what do you mean by sides? That Maitzadodin Asurim. What do you mean by the sides of a tree is prohibited? Problem remains still, why in the last case of the Mishnah, where there are 3 man-made walls, he is allowed to go up to the sukkah on the festival. This would be forbidden since the 4th wall is supported by the plank wall, which is supported by a tree, which is considered a side of the tree. And according to Abaye, it is prohibited to make use of the sides of a tree. Rather, the Mishnah there in the last case refers to a branch with thick foliage, which can be used as a wall just as it stands. Furthermore, the sukkah the schach rested solely on the 3 man-made walls and did not rest on the tree at all. He had the tree serve as a mere wall and not as a support for the schach. Therefore, when he makes use of the schach, he will not be making use of the tree. And for this reason, he is permitted to enter the sukkah. This explanation is also indicated by a precise reading of the wording of the Mishnah. For the Mishnah state in its conclusion, this is the general rule. Wherever the tree can be removed and the schach can stand by itself, it is valid and one may go up into it on the festival. Shmamina, learn from this that the last case of the Mishnah, where he is allowed to enter the sukkah, is a case where the tree is not supporting the sukkah roof at all. It emerges that when the Mishnah refers to a wall formed by a tree, it means that the tree itself formed a wall. Therefore, it cannot be used to refute Rabbi's view that one may make use of the sides of the tree. The Gemara now suggests that this issue may be in dispute elsewhere. Leima kesanoi. Shall we say that the dispute between Rabbah and Abaye is the subject of dispute between Tanoim? As we see in the following brisa. One may not go up into the sukkah on the festival. Rabbi Shimon ben Lozo said the name of Rabbi Meir that we do go to this type of a sukkah on Yom Tov. A sukkah that is supported by a tree, by a wall that is supported by a tree. So what is the machlekes between the Tanoim and Rabbi Meir? The Ma'asova Tzedon Asurin, and Ma'asova Matorin. One, the Tanoim said, Tzedodim, the sides of a tree, are prohibited for use. And Ma'asova, Rabbi Meir, contends that they are permitted. Amar Abaye Loi. Abaye said, no, this is based on a mistaken assumption. For even though, as you say, the case being argued is where the sukkah rests on plank walls supported by the tree, the issue between them is not that of using the sides of a tree. For everyone, including Rabbi Meir, agrees with me that the sides of a tree are prohibited for use. Can use the sides of the tree on Shabbos. Here, they dispute using the sides of the tree, the sides of the sides of a tree. So sides of sides. One Master Tanakama says even the sides of a tree are prohibited for use. And one Master Rabbi Meir contends that the sides of a tree are permitted for use. An opposing view, Rava said, whoever prohibits to use the side of the tree is also prohibiting to use the sides of the sides. And whoever permits Tzidit Dodim, the sides of the sides, also permitting the sides of the tree directly. Esi v'Rav Meshar Shayo. Rav Meshar Shayo challenged Rav. No, if one stuck Yosef Beilan. V'Solbo Kalkolo. So someone stuck a stake into a tree, which is a peg, you can use a peg, a nail, hung a basket on the stake. He put a nail and hung a basket on it and put his eruv into this basket, right? The eruv tchumen. If the basket hangs higher than 10 tfachim, any eruv is not eruv. It's not considered a good eruv. Because it's forbidden to take the eruv out of the basket on Shabbos. You can't use it on Shabbos. But if it was lower than 10 tfachim, it's about 50 inches, 3 feet. Each one is 5 inches, about 5 inches.
Right. So 5 times 10 is 54 feet.
Yeah. So the reason that he may remove the eruv when it is beneath the 10 tfachim, that he drove a stake into the tree. First, that's what he did, so that the basket did not hang directly from the tree. Haloi not, but if he had not driven a stake into the tree, but simply hung the basket from the tree, maybe he hung it onto a branch or something like this, his eruv is not. Why? Because he can't touch it on Shabbos. But now, here we see that the Tana prohibits using the sides of a tree, a basket hung directly from the tree, but permits using sides of sides. How then could Rava say that the Tana makes that no Tana makes such a distinction between side and sides of sides? We are dealing with a narrow mouthed basket into which he must force his hand. So that had it hung from the tree itself, when he would have taken the eruv, he would perforce have moved the tree, and by doing so he would be using the tree itself, something that is prohibited according to all opinions. So the Tana therefore requires that the basket not hung directly from the tree, but rather be suspended from a stake. Assumes this halacha is that the side of a tree are forbidden and the sides of sides are permitted. Now that you said that the sides are prohibited, in the case of an elevated ladder, in the following way: a person should not lean a ladder on the palm next to a watchtower, since the ladder would have the status of sides because it's leaning on the tree, so the tree and the ladder would be forbidden to touch. Rather, we should rest the ladder on stakes coming out of the palm, not directly on the palm. In this way, the ladder will be considered a side of a tree and will be permitted to climb it. And if he ascends, you should not rest his foot on the stakes, since that would be a use of the stakes themselves, which are a side of the tree. Rather, he should rest his foot on the rungs of the ladder, which is merely the side of the sides of the tree. Buchim tiv.
So